Hello again, and welcome back to Grammarville. Today's lesson will focus on the passive voice. So, first things first. What is the passive voice, and what is the difference between active and passive voice? Let's look at an example. Someone stole our car. This sentence is written in an active voice because you have a subject, someone, who did something, stole a car. If we were to rewrite the sentence using the passive voice, it would look like this. Our car was stolen. In this sentence, there isn't a subject, just an action. It tells us what happened, but not who did it. If we want to point out who did the action in a passive construction, we do it at the end of the sentence. Our car was stolen by someone. So you do it by adding the preposition by and then the agent. Now that we know what the passive voice is, let's look a little closer at how it is constructed. If we use the same example as before, we can see that a form of the verb be is used. In this case, was, followed by a verb in the perfect participle form, or the third verb form, stolen. The passive voice can be composed in different tenses. For example, in present tense it might look like this. Breakfast is served between 7 and 10 a.m. The same sentence in past tense becomes breakfast was served between 7 and 10 a.m. In perfect tense, breakfast has been served between 7 and 10 a.m. In past perfect tense, breakfast had been served between 7 and 10 a.m. Future tense, breakfast will be served between 7 and 10 a.m. Notice how the form of the verb be changes, but the following verb stays the same. Now that you've seen how the passive voice is constructed, you might be wondering why it's used. One of the reasons is that sometimes the subject isn't known, only the action is. For example, instead of writing, someone stole the jewelry, or someone saw a suspect fleeing the scene, a passive voice might be more appropriate. The jewelry was stolen, and the suspect was seen fleeing the scene. Sometimes you don't want to draw any attention to the subject at all, so instead of saying, I made a mistake, you could use a passive voice and say, mistakes were made. Or more importantly, if you're writing an article or a scientific paper, you don't want to draw any attention to yourself at all. For example, if you want to tell the reader to add a certain compound, you don't write, and then we added 2 grams of salt. Instead you use a passive voice. 2 grams of salt was added. A third reason could be that the action is the main focus, regardless of who the subject is. For example, by saying, cell phones will not be permitted in the classrooms, you focus only on the action. It doesn't matter who is responsible for the ban. It could be the teachers, the principal, the parents, the school board, etc. It is the fact that there is a ban that matters. On the other hand, sometimes you want to highlight the subject. This can also be done by using a passive voice. For example, instead of saying, John Johnson killed the victim, you can say, the victim was killed by John Johnson. By using an agent at the end of the sentence, you can put a bigger emphasis on who committed the action. Well, this is it for now. Goodbye and welcome back to Grammarville.
Created using Powtoon.